Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another training session with Sitebulb. If you're not already familiar with these sessions, we run them every month and we touch on different subjects that help you do more with Sitebulb and essentially get more out of your use of the tool. So, if this is your first session, I would encourage you to check out our product training page on our website and, yeah, keep an eye on future sessions. Um, I'm going to briefly introduce myself and then we're going to jump straight in because we have about half an hour to cover everything related to link and auditing your internal links within Sitebulb. So, my name is Miruna. I'm the customer support and success specialist here at Sitebulb, which means that I'll be in the inbox if you ever contact us for support. And I also do a lot of things like running these training sessions and providing documentation to help you use the tool. In today's session, like I said, we're going to focus on finding key links, data, and optimization opportunities within Sitebulb. So we're going to look specifically at audit settings that are useful to know about in order to set up audits that are going to give you rich linking data. We're going to look at how to find redirects and broken URLs within your audit data, then finding link opportunities, and orphan URLs that might benefit from internal linking. So I'm going to move on to our Sitebulb demo now and talk you through everything through the tool. Um, what I've got here is Sitebulb Cloud, so I'm accessing Sitebulb directly through the browser. It will look very, very similar if you're using it on desktop. It's just a matter of functionality and scale and how you access the tool. Okay, so I'm starting from the audit settings tab because I wanted to talk to you about what you need to do to set up to get linking data. So for most audits and reports in Sitebulb, you would need to enable something. However, um, link analysis is enabled by default when you crawl with Sitebulb. The default crawl source when you set up a new Sitebulb audit is crawl website, so this would be disabled. And that means the Sitebulb is going to take your start URL, find every link or internal link on that page, follow those links, crawl those pages, and so on. And that's how it's going to discover all of the pages on your website. Now, in doing that, it will automatically collect link data and provide you with link analysis, and this will be enabled by default. External link analysis will also be enabled by default, so you'll get data about external links on your audit. If you do not want that or you're not interested in analyzing external links in the audits that you're setting up, you can always disable that. But it's really up to you. Um, you'll see here that I've got a few more settings set up, and I will tell you about them as we go through our data and what is it that you can enable additionally. But the main idea here is that if you simply put in your start URL and you hit start on an audit with default settings, you will collect link data. Okay, so once you've run your audit, you finished your audit, you're going to land on the audit overview. From here, I just wanted to first point you towards the links report. So most of the data you have in Sitebulb is going to be organized and contextualized in these reports on the left-hand side, and there is a dedicated report for link data. This contains all of your key metrics, and this data is presented across different visualizations. So you've got a visualization about incoming internal links up here, and you've got two tables that talk you through the breakdown in status of your internal and external links. And then we move on to perhaps more niche things, but equally important. So we're looking at things like URL rank, so kind of page weight, um, response versus render, so which of your links have been created by JavaScript. And then we're looking at things like location and anchor text. I'm going to go through all of this in more details as we hit the different steps of your analysis. But the other way you can find your link data, so whether it is by accessing it through here, so by clicking on one of these metrics, or by accessing at the top, is the Link Explorer. So the Link Explorer is essentially, if you access it through the top menu and you just land on the unfiltered view, what you've got here is all of the links found on the website. So every single link Sitebulb has found is going to be listed here. Now, you can see that I've crawled around 800 internal pages in this audit, and yet I've got 69,000 links. So this is going to be a big report of data. Now, if you love analyzing data in bulk, this is a great place to start. However, you might want to start from the links report, and I'll kind of talk you through that in just a second. But what you've got in the Link Explorer is a column with your target URL. So that is, where are these links pointing to? Which page are they? Is each link leading to? And then you've got data about those links. So you've got the linking URL, which is the page on which the link was found. You've got the anchor text, the location, so whether this was found in the header, the footer, the content, the navigation, the breadcrumbs. Sitebulb will tell you where on the page it was found. And then you've got things like the crawl status. So is that target URL responding successfully? Is there redirect? And a few more pieces of data. So like the nofollow image, JavaScript status, was it created or even deleted by JavaScript? And then finally, at the very end here, you also have the CSS path of each link. So that could also help you very quickly determine where the link might be located on the page. And if you're kind of doing your own analysis and you want to very quickly locate it within your code, you can do that by using the CSS path. Okay, so like I said, the Link Explorer is a huge amount of data. For most websites, especially if you're dealing with large websites, you're going to have a bunch of links in here. You do have the option to use the advanced filter at the very top of this report to filter down your data. You also have the options to use the kind of predetermined menu at the top of the Link Explorer to jump straight into pre-filtered views of your data. So for example, I can look at internal links, redirected, and then that anchor text is going over, and then jump into a filtered list of only my links to redirected URLs. Similarly, you can look at anchor text, external links, etc. So you can pre-filter the data from here. However, if you start analyzing your data from the links report, any of these metrics that you click, so say if I clicked on all my unique successful links, will also take you back to the Link Explorer to a filter view of those specific pages that that metric is showing you. Okay, so let's talk about how to find specific points of data. In terms of broken and redirected URLs, so when we're talking about broken links, redirected pages, pages that have error that we have links to in our internally, this table is probably the best way to find them. So you go to your links report and you've got an internal link status table that breaks down the status of your pages for you. Now, this is the Sitebulb website, and you can see that our content and website team are doing a great job, and there's not any error or broken links on our site. But I can show you some different examples. So here's an example of a different website, a much larger website in this case. And again, you can see that there's a breakdown here in success, broken, and redirected pages. And I can jump straight into a list of these URLs from here. Now, you'll notice that there's two columns. So you've got all and unique links. If you jump into all links, you're going to have a list of every single redirected link that Sitebulb has found. So this is what I've gone into here. However, you've also got the unique column. So unique links are all of the links to the same page from the same location in the HTML using the same anchor text grouped as one unique link. And what Sitebulb is going to do, if you jump into that list of unique links, is tell you how many times that link has occurred in that kind of specific link. And you can then jump into a list of all links to target if you wanted to. But this is a much more condensed way of looking at your data, because most of the times when you have these unique links, so for example here, if I've got a link to this page, the data page in this case on the BBC website, and I know that all of those links are located in navigation, they have the same anchor text, um, and they lead to the same page, then I can assume that it's a navigation menu, right? That link is appearing in, and therefore that's why Sitebulb has grouped them together. And that means that if I'm dealing with a broken or redirected link, rather than having to go page by page and figure out where that link is, I can probably just go and edit the navigation element, and it will solve the issue for all 30 of those pages. Okay, at any point when you jump into a URL list, so again, let's say we wanted to look at all of our broken URLs, or let's do redirected URLs, you can filter your data, and you can also export it to CSV or Google Sheets, depending on your preferred method, if you would prefer to analyze it outside Sitebulb. Now, I just wanted to say something more on redirects, and that's because Sitebulb also has a dedicated redirects report. Now, obviously, if you're analyzing links, you're going to want to go to the link explorer through here to see all of the links to redirected URLs, and the data in there is going to help you find those redirects on your pages and update them. However, if you're dealing with a website where there's you've got a link to a redirected URL, but it turns out that that's part of a chain, a redirect chain, you might also want that data. So you can jump into your redirects report and use this button at the top right, export redirect chains, to create a document that shows you all of the redirect chains on your website, and you can address them like that. Okay, so you've gone into your link report, you found your broken and your redirected URLs. Hopefully, you've created an export, send them to your team, and those are being fixed. The next thing we want to look at is how to find linking opportunities. So, um, I would first recommend that you have a look at the hints that Sitebulb flags up in your links report. Every report in Sitebulb has a series of hints. They are categorized by priority and by type. So, is it an issue, a potential issue, or an opportunity for improvement? And you will see that Sitebulb picks up on very specific things within these hints that can really help you identify issues quickly. So, for example, internal links with no anchor text, um, images with no alt text that are linked, um, things like receiving uh, links from no follow or canonicalized URLs. So there's a whole bunch of data that Sitebulb will pick up on for you. Now, when it comes to the actual report and doing your own analysis, there's also a host of data in here. So the first table you'll encounter is the incoming internal followed links. So what this essentially is showing you is a breakdown of all of your pages according to how many internal links they have. So you'll see the amount of links versus the amount of pages or URLs linking to them. So what you would want here, ideally, is probably a good distribution where your key pages, like the bulk of your pages, have a good amount of links in them. So if we look back at the Sitebulb report, you'll see that there's a few pages on our website with no links. So immediately I can jump into that list and interrogate why is that these pages have no internal followed links. And I can see that they are blog category pages and that they are canonicalized. So they're not actually indexable URLs. So it's a quick way of kind of discarding if there are any issues in that area. And then there's also on the other side of the spectrum, around 52 URLs that have 500 plus internal links. Now, I know that there are just under 600 internal pages on our website. So I can, quite accurately guess that these are probably our core pages that are being linked to from the navigation or the footer or perhaps both. And those links are on every single page on my website. So I can jump into those links and you can see that indeed these are feature, product, support pages, release notes, all of the stuff that we link to from our footer and navigation. And then obviously you have everything in between. So this is kind of like a good way of very quickly seeing, like, do most of the pages on your website have a good amount of links in them, or do most of the pages on your website follow in this category where you only have one, two, or just a few links. And then you can obviously jump into those lists and see, okay, but if they don't have any links, is it for a reason? Is it because they are canonicalized or redirected, or is it because those pages are actually key pages that we failed to link to? The next thing you want to look at in this report is the URL rank. So I've briefly mentioned this before, but the URL rank is a measure of internal page strength based on relative link weight. So Sitebulb is calculating this after it's crawled every single page on the website, and it's essentially taking into account all of the internal links, and only internal links are taken into account for this consideration. So kind of like external links, backlinks, are not really being counted here. What you want to make sure is that your key pages have a good URL rank. So that means that they are being linked to from indexable URLs from many of your internal pages, and that they are well placed in the crawl depth. So you'll see three different tabs at the top here. The first thing is, in terms of UR status, there are 69 pages that have really good URL rank. And I can see that these are my key pages, and you'll see that metric here as a column. So if you go, for example, into URL Explorer, you'll always see that column there by default, and it helps you kind of identify the best link pages on your website. Where this gets interesting is that then you can move at looking at, for example, at URL rank by depth. So obviously, you would expect the best link pages, the pages with the best URL rank on our website, in this case 81 to 100, to be really high into our crawling structure. So when we say crawl depth, I'm talking about how many jumps or links Sitebulb has had to follow to find that page. Your start URL will be depth 0. Every single URL found on your start URL will be depth 1, and then the links found on those pages depth 2, and so on. What you don't want to find is that you've got like important pages, pages that you are linking to, or that are key pages that have like the depth is 3, 4, or beyond, where they are not high in your website architecture and they're not easily found. And equally, you kind of want to investigate the UR of those pages, especially those middle ones here. Like, is there anything that we can improve by taking these two metrics into consideration? And then again, obviously, these are metrics that you can play around in your URL list and kind of add them and remove them as you're analyzing other data to look at them. And then finally, in that same table, you've got the indexable status. So again, you want to make sure that you don't have any, in this case, for example, non-indexable pages that have really high URL rank, because if the pages have high URL rank, it means loads of your internal pages are linking to them. So should they be non-indexable, right? This might be justified. So in this case, I'll jump into this page and you can see that we've got our account login and our support website, which is on a kind of separate subdomains. But they are linked from every website, from every page on our website, because they are pretty much in our menu. So they have a really high URL rank. But that is a good thing to check, like, are there any pages on your website that Sitebulb has identified, like, hey, this seems like an important page, but you're actually no indexing them for some reason. Okay, and then like I said down here, so you will have had to crawl with the Chrome crawler to see this, but if your website renders some or most of its content using JavaScript, Site will also give you a breakdown of how many of your internal links have been rendered by JavaScript. Um, because of what we know about rendering in terms of search engines, but also the fact that we're talking about LLMs and AI overviews more and more recently, and we know that most LLMs don't actually render JavaScript at the moment, at least. It is probably a good idea to make sure that the links to your key pages and your essential links, if not all, if possible, are part of your response HTML. And then, like I said, down here you've got a breakdown of location and anchor text. So in terms of analyzing anchor text, I believe that is another interesting way of finding linking opportunities. So there are a couple of hints in your links report, actually, specifically flagging up web pages where the links have non-descriptive anchor text. So I don't think it's been flagged up for Sitebulb. It's probably in the no issue. But you'll see it flagged up on other websites. So if that is an issue on your specific audit, you will probably find it through that initial check of the hints list that I've recommended earlier. But if not, you've always got the option to analyze your anchor text through the Link Explorer. So to begin with, you could choose to do anchor text analysis for a specific page. So let's say I wanted to look at how we link to our JavaScript crawling page, which is one of our kind of key feature pages on our website. So I can put it in there. It's going to filter my target URL. And now I've got every single link to this page. And I can look at the anchor text and make sure that we're not using kind of vague statements. We're not using, non-descriptive anchor text, and that all of these pages use, like well-optimized and descriptive anchor text that will help both users and search engines understand what the page is about. On the other hand, you have the option to analyze a specific piece of anchor text. So, for example, Chrome crawler. If I click on that, I mean, that might not be a good example because it seems like there's only one instance of it. Let's have a look at response versus render, right? So you can click on a piece of anchor text and essentially see every single instance of that piece of anchor text. So how many links are using response versus render, and jump into that list of links. And what that might help you to do, depending obviously on your goals, is to understand if any of your pages are cannibalizing or kind of like going for the same keywords. Like, are you using the same keywords and the same anchor text and descriptive terms to link to different types of pages? In this case, obviously, we're linking to a support article about the response versus render report and to a product page about the response versus render report. So it makes perfect sense that those two are using the same keywords and the same anchor text. But it is a good way of analyzing if you think that might be an issue on your website. Okay, and then the next thing that we're going to look at is finding internal linking opportunities according to external data. So to do this, you're going to need to make sure that you have enabled your Google Search Console connector. So I've enabled that. I've connected to my sitebulb.com property. And then importantly, that you have enabled the keyword analysis report. So I've enabled the keyword analysis report, and I've added in my branded keywords here because I want to understand, I want to separate mentions of Sitebulb from other keywords. And then when I go back into my audit, I've got a keyword report based on that data from Google Search Console in here. So as you scroll down, you'll see that you've got a breakdown according to impressions and clicks. And you've also got all of that keyword data in here. So we can jump into keyword data. And what you can do from this point is essentially look at your data and identify pages with good position, clicks, and impressions, and then combine this data with the link data that we were talking about earlier. So, for example, I could add my UR. In here. So I want to know what the URL rank of my pages is. And then I also want to know what the crawl depth is. And then I might use my advanced filter to do something like look at impressions. And I want to look at pages with impressions greater than, let's say, 5,000. So I filter down pages with good impressions. I've got data about the specific keywords that these pages are ranking for. And then I can start looking at things like UR. Like, are there any pages on my website with a really good number of impressions, but where the rank is, let's say, less than 50, right? So this might be a good way of identifying any pages that are performing well, perhaps in your keywords, in your Google Search Console, identifying the keywords that they're performing well for, and then combining the data with the data that is relevant to your link report to kind of find those linking opportunities, whether, like internal or external. So that's one way of looking at it. The other thing that you can do is use Sitebulb to find kind of like brand new linking opportunities. So say you've created a new page, say we've created a new page when we introduced our Chrome crawler, and we now want to identify every single place on the website where we've mentioned JavaScript, so we can link back to that product page and we can tell our customers, use the Chrome crawler if your website depends on JavaScript. What you can do in those cases is use the content search feature, enable this, and add a search rule to find your specific terms that you might want to link to. And what Sitebulb is going to return for you is a report of every single URL where these search terms appear, and how many pages they appear, and that will let you essentially find those internal link opportunities. Finally, I want to talk about finding orphan pages. So we've got 2 minutes. I'm going to have to be quick here. But finding orphan pages is something that can be quite important because it's something that can get missed very easily if you're just kind of carrying out a basic crawl audit. But by combining data from different sources, it's really easy to then identify any pages that exist that are being indexed or ranked, but you don't have any internal links to, or perhaps you have some internal links to, but the architecture has broken down at some point where they cannot be reached from your homepage. So if you're looking to find orphan pages, what you're going to want to do is first connect to both your Google Analytics and your Google Search Console. And on both of those reports, you're going to enable extract and crawl any URLs found in Google Analytics and extract and crawl any URLs found in Google Search Console. Then in your crawl sources, you can add your XML sitemap, and you can even add a URL list if that is something that you've got of pages that you know are not linked internally, but you would like to crawl. And then in your include and exclude URLs settings, you actually also have the option to add a URL seed list, which the reason that's different from a URL list is because within your crawl sources, Sitebulb will not follow any links found on your XML sitemap pages or on any URLs submitted through a URL list. However, when you include a URL seed list, if you have, say, a directory in your website that you know is not accessible from, by navigating through from the homepage, Sitebulb is going to treat that as a new start URL, essentially. So then, really quickly, what you're going to have once you've run that audit is something like this. So in your audit overview, you can see that you've got an HTML URL sources, and Sitebulb is giving you a breakdown of the URLs found by the crawler in XML sitemaps, Google Analytics, or Google Search Console. So in this case, most of our URLs were found by the crawler. There are a bunch of URLs found in XML sitemaps, and barely, no URLs, only found in the sitemaps. But there were 14 URLs only found in Google Search Analytics. And if you jump into a list of those URLs, these are possibly what we would consider orphan URLs, because they weren't found through internal links. They were found through Google Search Analytics, which means they are possibly ranking in Google, they're being indexed, but we are not linking to them internally. Now, there might be reasons for this. It's not necessarily a reason to panic, but if you believe that there's a breakdown in your website architecture, this might be a good way of identifying where those gaps are. Okay, so that is all that we have time for now. There is much more to explore in terms of this topic. What I'm going to do is send you a few resources alongside your seminar recording. But if you do have any questions or requests for support, I also encourage you to use the InTool Help Center. So if you navigate to this help button here, you can find all of our documentation. You can ask, put your search term in here, ask questions, and hopefully that will help you find a document that explains each of these reports and talk you through all the settings. And then if you still haven't found your answer, you can always contact us and I'll probably get back to you. So thank you very much for attending this training session, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.